Welcome to Excel Lab 4. In this video, I'm going to walk you through step by step everything you need to do to complete Excel Lab 4. As you see on the screen, the first step is step 1, and that one you need to save this file to OneDrive. We always want to do that so we have a backup and we can undo things if necessary. I go up to the menu under File, click on File, Save a Copy. I go into my OneDrive. I click on the folder where I want to save this. In my case, I'll save it into BGSU for now. And I'm going to save this as elab 4_L Ultraman. I make sure it's an Excel workbook, which it is. And then I click on Save. Now, I'm going to get a message because I already have that file, but you won't, and I'm going to replace it. I hit Yes, and now my workbook has been saved. And if I've done it correctly, I'll look up the top and I'll see Saved. It'll say Autosave is on, and I'll be able to use the undo function also. Now we move on to step 2. Before I do step 2, I want to show you a couple things. This Excel spreadsheet has 4 different tabs. The first tab is Instructions, which we're walking through. The second tab contains all the student grades information. It's a database of rows and columns that we're going to use to get information. Tab 3 has a place we're going to develop some lookups. And then the final tab, Value Tables, is where we're going to keep where we keep our references for our formulas. Back to instructions on step 2, it says we want to remove the duplicates from our student grade table. Now, if you remember previously, in a previous exercise, we identified duplicates, but we didn't remove them. Now we're going to remove them. What I need to do is click on the upper right-hand corner of my student grades table. Don't highlight anything else. Click on A1. Then come to my menu and click on Data. And then there's a little icon here. You can't see the description, at least on my machine, but it's over here. And when I highlight over it, it says Remove Duplicates. I click on Remove Duplicates, and a window pops up. What I want to do is only remove duplicates related to the column called Student, not the other ones. So I'm going to go and unselect all of the columns and just select duplicates based on Student. So anywhere where I have a duplicate student, I'm going to delete. If I wanted to use other fields, I could, but in this case, I only want to use student. So I select student, then I click OK. Now I want to be careful because it's going to delete rows, but I click OK, and now all the duplicates are gone. It tells me that 4 duplicate values were found, and now 283 unique values remain. So out of my 287 records, 4 have now been deleted. I click OK, and I'm now done with that step. In step 3, I'm going to do some work with dates. As I've told you before, Excel stores all dates as numbers. So if you look at a cell, instead of seeing a date, you'll typically see a number in the value. This allows you to do arithmetic with dates. But the number 39227 is not what we want to display. We want to display a formatted date. So I need to format this column so that for the number that's shown, it'll display a date. So I highlight the column D, and then I go up to make sure I'm in Home. I go into my formatting area, and I click on Short Date. It then changes all the values in the column to a date. So you can see May 25th, 2007, April 16th, 2004, but all the values in column D are now showing up as dates. This is step 4. This is something that we've done before, and it'll be a little bit of a review. I want to add a column before the column birth date, and I want to name that column age. So I click on the student grade tabs. I come over here and I highlight the entire birth date column. And then I right click on that column and I see the different values. I click on it, insert, and then I want to name this new column age. Type in age, hit enter, and I'm now done with that step. We're now on step 5. With step 5, I want to be able to get today's date. If I'm going to do arithmetic to figure out somebody's age, I need to subtract today's date from when they were born. If I go to my value tables, and I already have a place here for today, Excel has a formula called today. And I type that in with equals today, open paren, close paren. I hit enter, and it gives me today's date. Now I'm ready to do arithmetic between today and someone's birthday to figure out their age. But as you can see up here at the top, the formula is equals today, open paren, close paren, and it'll return today's date. Step 7 is also something we've done previously. When working in Excel with lots of rows and columns, we often want to make sure we can see the far left column or columns along with the top row. And that's done by using freeze panes. If I click on cell B2, I come up here to view, freeze panes, our pop-up shows up, and I click on freeze panes. Now when I scroll, you can see the top row with student, last, first, age always stays. I can scroll that way. And then when I scroll over to the right, I can also always see the student name on the right-hand side. I've just put freeze panes into place. In step 8, I'm going to show you some functionality that'll be very helpful going forward. Up until now, when we wanted to select a range or select an area, we'd type in A8 ... A12, or we'd highlight something, but we're always working with cell numbers. If we're using the same group of cells over and over again, we can name a range for them. We can go ahead and define a name for them. That's what I'm going to do, is define a name for the various ranges that we'll be using this exercise. Later in the exercise, you'll see the value of using those. I click on student grades, and I'm going to name my first column. I'm going to highlight cell A1, and then I'm going to page down all the way to the last record, and then right click on this, and it gives me the opportunity to define a name. So I click on define a name. It's defaulting the name I have here, student, and that's why I want to name it. I say the name is student, and then it refers to cell A1 through A284. And notice that Excel put dollar signs in there for me. That range is going to be cell A1 to cell A284. I click OK, and it's now been named. I'm now going to do that for several other columns. I'm going to go over here and do my total points column. I come up here to the very top, and I start selecting that range. I'm going to page down to the bottom of total points. Do what I did before. I'll right click, define a name, and default to the name there to total points, P1 through 284. I click OK, it's been named. I want to do the same with birth date. So I come over to here, click on the very first cell in the range, page down, page down to the bottom, make sure I get everything in there. Right click, define name. It also defaults to the column name of birth date. That's why I want to call it E1 through E284. I click OK. I'm going to do it also for letter grade. Over here, I click on the first cell in letter grade. Same thing, page down. I get to the bottom. Bar there. I right click, define name. It also defaults to letter grade, but I could type in letter underscore grade. It's R1 to 284, so click OK. And finally, I want to do that for section. These are all things that are going to be my formulas, and it's going to make it much easier for me to use this once I have range names. I'm going to highlight everything in section. A little bit too far. Right click, define name, section, OK. Now I've named my 5 different sections, or 5 different columns. Step 9. With step 9, we use a new function. It's called COUNTIF. When we have lots of rows in a database, we may want to be able to count different types of rows. In this case, we have students from sections 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, and 1008. We want to know how many students are in each section. We're going to count them if they're in a section. In order to do this, I go to Student Grades, and I come over to the number of students. This is where I'm going to do the total. And I type in equals count if with open paren. I click on my FX. And now here's where my range names are going to be very helpful, because I want to use the range called section. Section is the column that has their section number in it. So I just type in section. Remember, I named that previously. So you can see all the sections for all the students are listed there, because now I'm referring to that range. And the criteria is I want to know when they're in section 1004. So I click on cell A292 where it has 1004. I don't need to put any dollar signs in. I click OK. That tells me that I now have 55 students who are in section 1004. That formula did it for me. It went over and checked the student section. And if you remember, the section is actually right over here in column J. So it's checking that section. And now I just have to copy the formula all the way down. Again, I don't have to worry about dollar signs. So I copy it all the way down. And now I have a count for students in section 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008. Because I was able to refer to this section, I didn't even have to highlight it at all. So it copied down and it's worked great. This is step 10. In this step, I'm going to use a function that's a cousin of COUNTIF. In this case, I want to add up the points from tests for students, their total points, if they're in a certain section. And that way I can figure out the average grades by section. So I come back into student grades, and I go over to total points cell. I type in equals sum if, and then I click on my FX. Okay. So the range I want to check again, in this case, is column J, which is section. So I type in section. The criteria I want is I want all the students in the database who are in section 1004. So I click on where I have the 1004 here, cell A292. And then I want to sum the total points. I want to get all the total points for the students in 1004. I type in total underscore points. And now I have all of those, all the points for students in section 1004. I want to do that for the remaining sections. So I can flash fill or copy it down here. And now I have all of the points. And in a minute, I'll show you how we do the average for those. Now we're on section 11. In this section, we're going to figure out what is the average test score for students. We have the total number of points, we have the total number of students, and we know that there's 4 individual exams. I need to create a formula that's going to divide the total points by the number of students and by the number of exams. And that's going to give me the average score by section for each exam. I go on to student grades. I go over here to my average cell. And I say I'm going to equals the total number of points divided by the total students divided by 4. And I have the average score per student per test in section 1004. I use flash fill to copy it all the way down, and I can see the different averages for the different number of sections. And again, the formula is the total points divided by the number of students divided by 4, since we have 4 tests up here. In step 12, I'm going to show you how to do and how to use conditional formatting. Sometimes we want to highlight a cell because of its value. If it's a certain range, it'll be green. If it's another value, it could be red or a warning. So with conditional formatting based on a value, I can make a cell display one color or another. In this case, with student grades, we're going to do that with letter grade. I'm going to highlight, I want to make sure I just highlight our students here. I highlight all the way down to 287. And I come up into home conditional formatting. And I have my highlight cells rules. And notice I can do greater than, less than, and others, but I'm just going to do equal. And I have to do this 5 times, 1 for each value. So if the cell value is equal to A, I want the cells to show up as green fill with dark green text. So I click on that and I say, okay. Now I need to move this up here so we can see, but notice that all of the A's now are green. I'm going to do the same thing for B's. I want B's to also be green. So I go back in there again and say, highlight cell rules equal to a B. And I don't want them red, so I'm going to change them again to green. So all of these are going to be green. I click OK, and my A's and B's are green. Do this again for my C's, but I want my C's to be a warning. I want those to be yellow. So I come over here and click and say, if it's C, give me a yellow. What's a warning? For my D's, I want that to be a red warning. So I'll click here on equal to D. And it defaults to a red, so I'll click on there, light red. And then my F's, if I have any, equal to F's and red fill. If I come look at this column now, you can see all the different cells are highlighted. There's an F, C's, etc. But I've done that, and I can use this on other columns if I'd like to. Step 13, we're going to use the concat functionality. Excel not only allows you to do formulas on numbers, but you can also do formulas on words and letters. We call them strings. So if we want to take the values in multiple cells, put them all together in one cell, we can do that using various functions. The one I'm going to show you now is concat. So we're going to go over to the lookup table. What I want to do is I want to create a lookup name. And so I want to have the last name, comma, first name as a lookup. Because if you notice over here in the student table, that's how the names are stored, is the last name, comma, first name. And so in a minute when we do a lookup, I want to be able to have the lookup name in that format. So I go to cell D5 and I type in E concat, open parenthesis. Of course, I click on F of X, and now I put in the values I want to have appear in this cell. So I want to have the last name first, so I'm going to click on Allen. The next thing I want to do is I want to put a comma in there. Over my values table, I actually have a comma and a space stored. So I'm going to click on the comma and the space. Now, I want it to always be in that same reference. So I'm going to put my dollar signs in here in front of the 24, the B. So when I copy them down, they'll stay where they are. And then finally, the last thing I want to have in there is the first name. So I now click on cell B5, click OK. And now I have Alan, Aurora, and that was done via the concat functionality. We're now on step 14. And for 14 and 15, we're going to use a functionality that's fairly new to Excel. It replaces VLOOKUP and makes lookups extremely easy. I want to make sure you learn how to do this. And now that we have range names, it's even easier. So in our lookup table, we want to be able to look up student names and find information about them. We want to be able to find their grades and their birthday over here in the student grade table. And so I'm going to put a formula in here that's going to look up Alan Aurora and return the grade. So I type in equals X lookup, open paren. I click on FX, like I always do, and I say, I'm going to look up a value. What value do I want to look up? Well, I want to look up this last name, first name. So I click there, and that's cell D5. Now, what do I want to look up? I want to look up in that field that has all the student names in it, and I name that field student. I type in student. You can see all the names of students with last name followed by first name are there. And what do I want to bring back? I want to bring back their grade. Remember, I also named that field letter grade. So I type in letter underscore grade and click OK. And now I've just put in a formula that's looking up Alan, Aurora's grade, which is a C. We're now on step 15. To make sure you get practice on XLOOKUP, we're going to do one more XLOOKUP. And in step 14, we looked up the student's grade. Now we're going to look up their student's birth date. I go back into lookup, and I'm going to do an XLOOKUP. I say equals X lookup, open paren, click on f of X. Again, the value I want to look up is the lookup name of Alan Aurora. So I'm looking for Alan Aurora. Where am I looking for Alan, Aurora? I'm looking in the student range of the table. And what value do I want to bring back? I want to bring back their birth date. So I type in birth underscore date. Remember, that's the range I named it. I hit OK. It actually brings back the birth date. So now my lookup table, I look up Alan Aurora by the C grade and a birth date. In step 16, we're actually going to use the lookup table to look up additional student names. So I go to the lookup table. You can put any names in there you want. I've decided I'm going to look up Jacob Cooper. And I'm going to look up Zeke Dawson. Look up Sheila Gray and Ivy Sanders. Okay. Now I need to copy these formulas down here so they'll work. So I'm going to copy down the concat formula. I'm going to copy down the grade. I'm going to copy down the birth date. And it looks like Sheila Gray doesn't exist. I must have got the wrong name, but let's find a different name to put in there just to show you how that works. So I can come over here and look up Jade Martinez instead. We'll make sure that Jade actually exists in there. So I type in Jade Martinez. And now I get a grade. And basically, whatever names I want to type in here, I can get their grades and their birth date. Give me another example. I want to get Zoe Lewis. I can type in Zoe Lewis. And I have Zoe's grade and birth date. So this is a very basic lookup functionality. And if I know students' names, I can just type them in and return their grades and birth dates without having to search the entire table. Step 17 is back to formatting. I am going to center columns D through R and all their contents. We've done that before. I click on student grades. I move over to column D, with D through R, highlight that. See me selecting there and selecting them. And I want to center it. So I click on the center button here, and all of the columns are now centered. D through R. One more item of formatting. I'm going to put border lines around my database table. I click on student grades. I highlight the whole area that I want to have border lines on, all the way down to the bottom, up to cell 284. I go across to the very last column and highlight that area. I always use the entire area is highlighted. I come into borders, say all borders, and they're all covered. It looks much better with the borders. Step 19, we're going to do data filters again. In this case, I want to filter on all students who have a major of aviation or MIS and who earn C or D grades. I come over to the student grade table. When I use filters, I always go up to the upper right-hand corner to A1. And when I click on filters, it's going to automatically put filters in for my entire table. I'm in cell A1, and Excel knows when I click data, filters, you see all of these filters appear along here. And it did it for all the columns and all the rows. I said that I wanted to be able to select only MIS and aviation majors. I click on the little arrow here and notice that all of the majors that are in here have now been determined by Excel. All the majors are listed, and I can decide which of these majors do I want to show. If I deselect them all, and I said earlier I want to look at aviation and MIS. I could easily have picked others, but I want MIS and aviation. I hit OK, and now I'm only seeing the students in the database with MIS and aviation. In addition, I also want to see certain letter grades for those students. So I come over to letter grades and I click on the arrow here, and I want to see all students who have either grades C or D. If I deselect all the grades and I click on C and D, and OK, and now I have a list of all of the aviation and MIS majors with C and D grades. We're now at step 20, and the final step for that is to submit to Canvas. If you did the first step, which was saving your file, there's actually nothing more to do. Inside of Excel, go out to OneDrive or wherever you saved your file and upload it into Canvas, and you are finished and done.